Brazil. I'm sorry, I'm only speaking English. Is that okay? I know you have oh, it's sweet. Okay, that's wonderful. Well, I'll begin. I thought that this was going to be a panel discussion, and I didn't have a presentation ready. It was kind of nuts, and I apologize initially. But let me begin. Oh, there should be audio on this. It's all good. Thank you, thank you. I work on many different things in many different areas, from brand identities to environments to all kinds of different experiments, robots making cocktails, large screens that you can walk through, and, it's all about being interesting, fun, really trying to push the new boundaries of what I can achieve. There was one identity that I don't have that I did 2 years ago for Nubank. Do you know that identity? Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't put it on here. My apologies. But the fact of the matter is that, design is about obtaining efficacy by extraction through applications of rational thinking, creative skill, and appraisal, acquiring a transformational and progressive outcome. That's what I really, truly believe. And the fact of the matter is the designs that I sort of create, and this is for reincorporated, these are for the former U.S. Women's World Cup winners, Megan Rapinoe, Kristen Press, and Tobin Heath's company. This is for the World Cup identity that just went, is that I think that the idea for me is that typography is an important factor behind the importance of obtaining an efficacy by extracting through applications of rational thinking. I think we don't take typography or type design as important as we should. This is a design that I built for, and my team built for Lululemon. It's called Calibri Practice from Chris Salby. And this is a design that I created with my team for Mellon Foundation. Mellon Foundation is one of the largest cultural foundations in the world. It has an $8 billion endowment to use every year. And the whole idea was to create a mark that was variable and fluid and really intriguing, but also aligned to their particular principles of humanity, a sense of inclusion, a sense of nurturing for the arts itself. So who's been to America? Okay, a lot of you. Do you know where this is? This is Nebraska. And it's not only Nebraska, it's the aspect of Omaha. I've been working with people in Omaha on the Great Plains for some time. I was introduced to the Omaha Performing Arts, and this is the identity I developed for them a while back. And one of the things about Omaha is that it's pretty much the Midwest. It's interesting, but the fact of the matter is it is really an all-American city. And what that means is that it's synonymous for everything Americana that you can actually sort of put your hands on. And it doesn't really have a bustling design culture at all, but I wanted to sort of change that. And Omaha is very interesting. It's the highest number of millionaires per capita in the nation, right? And it's got more millionaires than in New York City. That's crazy, right? And this guy is Warren Buffett. If nobody knows, this is Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, used to be the richest man in the world. And he lives there in a very, nice house, but the fact of the matter is he goes down to the coffee shop nearly every morning and gets his own coffee. That type of American is important, that they are with the people, for the people, and in principle, this is also another man, and a very important man, especially for me, who was born in Omaha, Nebraska, Malcolm X. And the fact of the matter is that Omaha is one of those places that is sort of changing its past, but also trying to remember it in an important factor. Now, it was Malcolm X's birthplace, but the fact of the matter is that his family did not have a great time there. 3 of his uncles were murdered by the Ku Klux Klan whilst he was there, so he sort of gave up on the idea of Omaha. So it has a difficult past, but the principle is that it needs to move towards the future. And how does it do that? So Omaha is really the gateway to the West, right? Its motto is, "We don't coast," right? And the fact of the matter is that this story that I'm going to relay to you is about this particular institution. It's the largest arts institution in Nebraska. It's called the Jocelyn, and it was developed in 1931, designed by an architectural team called John and Alan MacDonald. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place. One of the things that they've been trying to do over the course of decades is expand it to introduce more to the arts in Omaha and Nebraska. And to do that, they asked one of the world's greatest architects, Norman Foster, to develop an extension to it that really aligned to the overarching architecture of the original building. As you can see, it's very blocky, very not Norman Foster-esque. And this guy is Prince Maximilian Novid. He was a German ethnographer and explorer, and he traveled through the Great Plains region with a painter called Karl Bodmer. And this is one of Bodmer's pieces. And Maximilian was not really interested in the aspects of finding flora and fauna, which he was supposed to do in the interior of America. He was really fascinated by and concentrated on the culture, language, customs, and experiences of indigenous people. And so here I am wanting to talk about regenerative narrative, the whole point of this presentation. And what is it? Well, regenerative narrative sounds really complex, but it's really not. It's about rebirth, right? But it's not ordinary rebirth. It's about something that is or has been lost, or vital elements, or never had them in the first place, and it needs to survive and adapt. It's a rebirth that builds agency, sense of empowerment, that is intelligent and inclusive, and we're actually at that moment in time that we have to utilize these types of terminology instead of utilizing the term transformational all the time. And thus, the narratives cannot be compounded into one single perspective, right? They need to be diverse. They have to have the capacity to evolve and regenerate through new ideas, innovation, and new patterns that provide new pathways back to flourishing and thriving cultures. And so this is Sarah H. Jocelyn, and she created the museum in memory of her husband, George, who's on the right-hand side there, or the left, if you're looking at it. And the fact of the matter is that the museum itself, the building, the first building, is very atypical engravings. The sense of messaging is interesting, but it has atypical engravings on it. But one of the things that it does on the sides, on the facade, is that it starts to have these peculiar carvings of the sense of type. And the inscriptions are created by a gentleman called Hartley Burr Alexander, an expert in Native American anthropology, and he wrote the inscriptions for the building. And then the actual engraver is a Serbian-American, Chicago-based sculptor called John David Burson. And this is where these guys come in, Snohetta. And Snohetta are a well-renowned Norwegian architecture firm, and they wanted to design a 42,000 square foot addition to the museum itself. And in this new addition, they would have great new galleries, and the architecture team was sort of included in this aspect, so there's a sense of collaboration to this. And they wanted to sort of restore and modernize also the existing interior of the Jocelyn building. And so it's this sweeping piece that comes right out of the building itself. And so the idea here is to make the Jocelyn a status not only in Nebraska, but the Northwest and potentially the country as a cultural hub for visual arts by reorientating the museum's grounds and reimagining the public arrival approach. And so here are some of the aspects. They're nearly finished. This opens next year. And one of the things that we had to do on the branding aspect is really focus our attention on the community at large. We looked at 31 stakeholders, leaders within the community themselves, over 1,300 surveyed respondents from the communities, and this is a zip code area, the sort of postcode area of Nebraska, and also 20 hours of conversation with people. And what did we find? We found a lot of elements. The idea that this museum needed to be well-respected but not edgy. Design excellence at the forefront. That's what they wanted. They wanted it to have the taste, the sense of maturity, admiration, and that was important. But they wanted to achieve the sense of bold change. They wanted to push the boundaries, and that's really new and unique within the cultural aspects of Middle America. They wanted to be quiet, dynamic, but not quiet at all. And so that was also the aspect. They wanted an underlying energy that sort of pumped up and sparked creativity. They wanted to be illuminating. They wanted to be illuminating, a sense of showing one's knowledge, one's light, instead of being intimidated, right? And so this idea of regenerations came out of it. And it was the idea of perpetual becoming and the sense of change. It showed the sense of being fresh, and it speaks to an unending renewal. They wanted an evolution through their generations of the community and for generations upon that. They wanted to wonder, they wanted to imagine, they wanted to reimagine. And there was a continual opportunity to spark new ideas at the Jocelyn. And so where the greats of past would inspire people of today and tomorrow. And so one of the things that we tried to do is look at it from this particular standpoint. We said, we don't want to show a visual logo that is supposedly a representation of every single part of this community. It doesn't make any sense. And I think that's one of the things that we have to start thinking about. Do logos really deal with the representation of who they of the community at large. If you take the idea of Twitter, now X, I mean, come on, it doesn't work anymore, right? And so the idea here is to let type be the torchbearer for the narrative. It's a natural thread that weaves everything together, right? Let's be imbued, right? Let's really focus on this sort of contextual meaning. Let it not be inert, but energize the people. And so we went back and we started looking at the engravings on this particular building, and it wasn't really enough. The fact of the matter is that that is the logo. That's not the logo I created. No. All right? That is the logo that stands, and it doesn't really represent it. If anybody's a designer, they probably know what this typeface is. It's Rhodes. Did you know what it was? Yeah? No? Okay, so Rhodes is another story in itself. This is the man that created it, the great Otto Eicher, the German designer of the late 20th century, also developed the identity for the Munich 1972 Olympics. And what Eicher did for this typeface is that he wanted it to be exceedingly special, very different from what you know of a particular sans serif. It had very peculiar ideas to it. And the fact of the matter is that it was not well received. A lot of people started using it in the 80s and then 90s, and it wasn't well received. And ES is the type designer, Eric Spiekermann, and he said this: Rhodes succeeds because people need white gods, so they can switch off their faculty and just believe what they are told. And that idea of white gods is interesting. It actually came from Eric, who is white, but it was based upon an article that my partner, Michael Beirut, who is on the I think that's the right-hand side, wrote about I Hate Garamond, an essay in Design Observer some years back. And it was this idea that people started hating on different typefaces, and Eric brought up Rhodes. And he said this: he said, architecture is an integral part of, Otto Eicher said this, that architecture is an integral part of the visual identity. But the fact of the matter is that Eric Spiekermann felt as though it was only good for gravestones and similar large architectural applications. But hopefully you're seeing what I'm getting at here. This aspect is that Rhodes is the typeface that is used for Jocelyn, and why so? Is it because Otto Eicher, basically loved it because it would work on architectural engraved areas? Not so. It may be because it was also a friendship that was created from the likes of Norman Foster, that you can see here, and Otto Eicher. They were very good friends for an exceedingly long time. And so I have a funny feeling that Rhodes actually came into being because of the architecture, not because of its standing and representation of what the museum actually was. This is an extract from an article talking about the collaboration between Eicher and Norman Foster in the 80s and 90s, and how Foster's actually utilized the typeface on his letterhead, and thus there is more evidence of that in regards to aspects of books that Otto Eicher developed for Norman Foster during the 80s and 90s as well. And just to let you know that extension was developed in 1991 and 1992. And one of the aspects of this is really interesting, is that Otto Eicher hated all caps. He hated all caps. He felt as though they should be eliminated from the use, and that was a very sort of strange element. He thought they had a sense of hierarchy and pompousness towards it. And so we said, yes, no to this logo mark. It doesn't represent the museum. The mark actually suffers from myopia, only symbolizing the past, not today, not tomorrow, and showing no significance towards the regeneration values. And with that, we basically had stated that Rotis had no place in the future for this particular museum. That argument needed to stand. But Foster's architecture does something else. It tries to teach, and I quote the value of deference and dignity and continuity and contextualism, but Rotis doesn't do that. The architecture does, but the typeface doesn't. So why even utilize it? And so I'm an anti-person to a certain degree, and I create this sense of antithesis everywhere I try to tread. And with that, I continue this story. The tripartite is a type of object that has 3 parts to it. And it informs that this particular tripartite that Snohetta created was the idea that started the whole concept. It informs the architectural structure and aesthetics that draws on surrounding natural terrains of Nebraska. And that was a really interesting aspect. And I believe that it is a key indicator of how buildings not only can be, that can coalesce, but relays how regeneration works in a physical form. And so how can typography align to this and more? And what we did is basically take those 3 buildings, the Jocelyn, the Scott, and the Hawks Pavilion, which they are called, and start to think about a unification of type, but using the idea of Brescian's engravings at the foundations of what we're trying to create. And so we start off with the Jocelyn. So we look at the aspects of the angles of the architecture form. This is from 1931, of course. And in the interior, it's actually quite amazing as well. And then we start to look at the angular crossbars, the angular strokes, and the angular cuts within the actual type. We looked at the sharp corners. We looked at the flares. And these are really irregular elements, and that's what we're always looking for. Things that are not simple, but really irregular, right? We needed to assimilate a grander narrative to imbue it with historical undertones initially, and societal and cultural symbolism, and an unparalleled artistic beauty that encompasses a progressive and forward-thinking discourse. And so how do we take these particular elements? We started to create this particular anatomy, and we generated this. With the Scott, very similar, but it's just a square. It's just rectangular. It's quite simplistic in its prospects. And thus, that's what we use, something which is rectilinear, but we apply it to the Brescian system. And then we take the Hawks Pavilion, the Snohetta. We look at the curvature, we look at the contemporary aspects to it, the rectilinear constructs, we apply them together, and we have this. And so the idea was to create a type system and a word mark or a logo mark that emphasized who and what the Jocelyn is in all these stages. And so let's say that the Jocelyn created an entirely new extension. Would you apply that to this mark? Yes. The idea here is that it changes over the course of time. And it looks strange because of it. That's a good thing, right? This is some of my team working on the type system, Pedro, Ruben, and Bella. This is downstairs in the New York office. And so one of the things that we looked at for it is to create a historical, modern, and contemporary feel for the type system itself. And that is an important factor when we're trying to develop the anatomy. And so here is the typeface, and you're probably saying, where is the lowercase? There is no lowercase yet. There doesn't want to be one because of Otto Eicher to a certain degree. This is the Scott, and this is the Hawk. And so the fact of the matter is that I'm not a type designer of sorts. I'm just a designer, a generalist that loves type, right? And I feel as though we as designers should look more into the aspects of type form to have the, you could say, the solutions for the future in regards to it. These are the diacritics, these are the numerals, and for a Midwestern museum to actually utilize this, it's quite something. But I haven't finished yet. The Jocelyn in itself has these classifications, these art classifications for different categories. So from ancient items, which are indigenous or even Roman oriented or even beyond that, all the way from European, American, Native American, arts of American West, Latin American, post-war, contemporary Asian. And so the idea of regeneration is really there, that it really speaks to the becoming and a sense of the past and to the present and what's to come. And so we built two other typefaces into it. Just to let you know, the museum didn't know that we were going to do this. We believed that it was the right thing to do, and they accepted because it made more sense. And so how do you utilize the type system? And it's all based upon the principles of oppression and the attitudes of those particular categories, the historical aspects, the modern, and the contemporary. And so we started applying our serif structures, our diacritics, our flares, and it still also has some strange-looking elements to it. But it's also an importance of actually laden it with the importance of inclusion. And what do I mean? Well, the community is also made up of a small percentage of Omaha Ponca, which is the Native American tribe that is situated in Nebraska. And this has audio.
Omaha speaking.
That's just telling these ladies that I've seen a lot of changes in my people.
So
Our tradition,
what it's basically stating
it's not the same.
is that the language is dying. It used to have over 600 languages spoken, only 100 are left.
Today you look
in
at
America.
it and you feel sad about it because those people don't want to learn it, don't want to take time for it. That's
So they don't want to,
antiquated.
no
And
kids
said,
want
"Why
to
should I
learn it,
It's
they don't
gonna be
have
gone
time
anyway."
for it.
It's because the attitude
That's
is
a
going to be
problem. Culture is dying out, and language is important.
They're not going to have it. They're going to wonder why they're not hearing what I'm talking about.
I often ask my mother where the language come, and she looks up there. She says he gave that to us.
The language is everything for us as a tribe. Without it,
He's
it's
saying
really
language is
hard to
everything for
understand
him
the
as a
true
tribe,
identity of
and
the
to lose
Omaha
that,
people.
Without the
would be
language,
everything gone.
I feel like I would not be a complete circle.
I want to know my language so people know my tribe and where I'm from, and to keep the language going so the traditions don't fade away.
So we took, sorry to cut that off, I know about time, but we took the existing glyph system, the type system of Omaha Ponca, and it's only typed in sort of default Times Roman, and there's some extraordinary glyphs that it actually has. And we tried to apply it to our system in regards to that generation. Now, Jocelyn actually has one of the largest collections of Native American art in the country, and they wanted this to be an important added to their aspect of their identity so they can actually talk about it as well and utilize the language even more so. And so it's quite difficult to actually get these glyph systems into and working on the keyboard, but we did through the help of ABC Dynamo in Switzerland. So I'm going to show you what the identity system actually looks like, or partly. We're still building it out. It'll be ready in 2024. But the idea here is that I personally haven't seen a typeface that looks like this. Have you? And so we need to make sure that we don't lose the aspects of the past to get to the future. But we also need to create new pathways that we don't stop at one point, that we continue adding to the system itself. And that's a great thing because typography can be added to over the course of time. A logo? No, not really. Here is, it says, "Greetings, it is good that you have arrived here in Omaha, Ponca." And so we still strive every day until the middle of next year to develop the final pieces to this particular identity system and how it will actually, hopefully, show an illuminating path for Jocelyn and the people of Omaha and also beyond. Also, each building, the typeface will be utilized in each building separately. It will not be used in the same places. So that's a lovely aspect of being this particular type system. So, what I'm talking about in regards to uncooked or cooked, the fact of the matter is that I wanted to know whether or not I have done enough or I have gone too far with what I'm trying to achieve with my team. And the fact of the matter is, to use a cooking analogy, would the Germans, Erich Spiekermann, Otto Eicher, think that the Jocelyn is now undercooked or overcooked? So Eric sees this typeface not as a full typeface. He would never. He would look at it as all caps, so that's not a typeface. Or Otto Eicher would perceive it as being oppressive. But this is also from white gods. So I don't really know. But I take it from this idea of what would Maximilian Neuwied think. Would he think seeing the Omaha Ponca language be celebrated through the premier Midwestern Museum type system be fascinating, or building agency? I really hope both. I really, really do. And so the fact of the matter is, regenerative narrative strategically will build better agency for museums and its communities, starting to share an ideology everyone can get around. You gain ownership, but what we have done is not enough on the visual side. We need to do is the journey of regeneration is a continuous process. Regenerative cultures are not a static goal. I hope this mark changes over the course of time, but it evolves, right? It takes a new path. It's a continuous transformation in response to change within the nested complexities that they participate in, the community that is. So I do hope that more of my clients can see this new day so I can further understand the prospects of regenerative narratives, and not only through the repositioning, but how visuals can actually really, really help. So I say, thank you.